Morning, everyone. Welcome to Zen Minded Men. We're your host. I'm Sensei Art Gulley Jr.
I'm Sensei Vince Ellis. Today, as we move down the list of the 7 virtues of Bushido, we're getting closer to the end. This week and next week, we'll round out that list. So today, the subject is honesty, timely for our week in American history. Here, November 9th or 8th, rather?
Eighth.
November 8th, yeah, 2020. So honesty, as defined, is just simply the act of being honest. So we got to delve a little deeper here. So what is it to be honest? To be free of deceit and untruthfulness or sincere. I went and gathered one more definition. What honesty as a virtue, because we are talking about virtues here. Let me pull this up really quick. Honesty is a virtue. I'll put on my glasses because this is real small text. Honesty is a facet of moral character that connotes positiveness and virtuous attributes such as integrity, truthfulness, straightforwardness, including straightforwardness of conduct, along with the absence of lying, cheating, theft, etc. Honesty also involves being trustworthy, loyal, fair, and sincere. So there we are as defined, and I think that fits where we're at with what we're trying to convey as far as what we learn in our martial arts values, and I think what we try to convey as men out in the world.
When you look at what's happening in our country, given the election and everything, I think that honesty is a virtue that lately seems to be sorely lacking in our political leaders on both ends, to the point where you really don't know who to believe or who to trust because everyone's speaking, but everyone has their own agenda. And I'm afraid that it's made our country a lot very destabilized. Because if you can't trust your leadership, you kind of have a problem. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And this is, goes back a long ways, obviously, in politics, back to the probably when it got brought to the forefront was the Nixon years, right? The whole Watergate scandal and the Nixon tapes back in the 60s. But at least then, what brought that forward was an honest press. Our media these days are so biased on both sides that the public can't really trust what we're getting, and even social media now, social media was a place where you might look for some unbiased information that wasn't being filtered by an editor or someone with a greater agenda. But, at least during this last 2 election cycles, probably, we've seen where social media has played a huge part in driving the direction of certain information by either promoting one or repressing another view. Very unfortunate. In the
It's almost
martial
as if social. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, it's almost, to me, it's like social media has been weaponized, for lack of a better word. It's been weaponized to suit I don't want to say the common agenda, but I want to say the agenda with the most power behind it. Often the common agenda is not the agenda that's necessarily the one that's going to win. So it's like social media has become a tool in which you can, as you say, you can sway that narrative. There is so much information about our both presidential candidates. You don't know what to believe. You don't know what's true, what's not true. And like you said, we used to have an honest press where it seemed like the press operated under a sense of integrity, which was another one of our topics we discussed. Now, it's almost as if the press is operating under how many viewers can we get? How many, how many people can we get to read this? How sensational can we be? And sadly, how much money is being fed into our coffers Let's sway that narrative. And then when you move it further to the point where you have other countries using their cybernetic technologies and, as for lack of a better word, hackerisms to influence our media and news, to influence our politics and society, it's to the point where honesty, honesty at one point, honesty was the coin of the realm. I would have to say way, way, way back in the day, you prided yourself on being honest. Nowadays, I don't know what the coin of the realm is anymore. Is it integrity? Is it accountability? It doesn't seem like it's honesty. And I think that that is something that, taking it to the dojo, we had to learn honesty real quick. And not so much as telling the truth, but an honesty of your abilities. You learned real quick how good you were, how bad you were, what you needed to do, what you needed to work on. There was no getting around it. You could not say, "Oh, I've been practicing this block every day," because when someone throws that punch, the truth is going to become real apparent. And it holds us to a higher standard that we can carry to our other lives. I'm going to be honest in my dealings with you. If I think you're doing something wrong, I'm going to be honest and say, "Hey, I don't agree with that." Because of what I learned at the dojo, because I had to be held accountable in the dojo, because I had to be honest with myself and my abilities at the dojo, I want to be honest with myself in every aspect of life. Now, as a teacher and owner of a school, how do you convey that message to your students? Because you're at the forefront of guiding our young minds who will hopefully grow up and be more honest people than the ones that seem to be running us now. How do you guide that, Sensei?
Well, hon- honestly, it always starts with you, right? For one thing, I have to be honest with them. If I say something, it has to hold water. It has to be true. So whether it's starting out with my just running my business, you know my classes are sometimes small. It's a growing business. So one way to convey honesty in that aspect is, regardless of who's there, we hold class. Class starts at 7 o'clock. So I'm there at 6:30. The doors are open. If I'm not there, if the doors aren't open, that looks bad on me. I'm not being honest with my consumer. I'm not being honest with my customer. I have entered into an agreement to provide a service. So for me, it's important, as an honest business person, not just as a martial artist or a man of integrity. It's important to me that if my calendar dictates a certain number of classes in a certain, order, that's how we follow that. If there's changes, I convey that in advance and give reason. Because things come up, and we use various channels to communicate that, whether it's social media or whatever, and then we bring that forward to the mat, in what we teach. We try to teach a quality art. And, when you teach a technique, you expect it to work a certain way, and or a principle. More importantly, is a principle. You want to teach solid principles. Techniques work when they're applied correctly, but principles, if you follow the principles, they're always going to work, right? So I try to make sure that I demonstrate, the techniques, that they see me doing the things that I'm asking them to do. Therefore, they know that I'm not asking them to do something impossible or impractical. It's things that I do myself. So when they hear the words coming out of my mouth, they know I'm being honest. I'm not sitting in a corner in a chair somewhere, leaned back, just pointing my finger, giving direction. I'm on the mat in my gi. This is the same way we came up. I'm doing everything I've asked, or I'm asking my students to do. And I think the combat sports are awesome for feedback in that aspect, because honesty, like I said, it starts with you. You have to be honest with yourself. And you brought that out, in what you said earlier, with, if you're doing that block and you're not practicing, you're going to get immediate feedback. Or you're doing that technique and it's not working, you're going to get immediate feedback. Combat sports will not let you lie to yourself. If you're engaged in real training or real competition, regardless of what you think you're doing. You know, when you get up against a motivated opponent, they're going to let you know real quick if there's truth in what you say, you know, because it's either going to work or it's not. But does that make sense? Does that, you know, and
Totally.
yeah, we try to follow, you know, again, and then holding people accountable. We talked about accountability, but honesty goes into accountability. When I when I tell a student, you know, you have to do this, this, and this to get that next rank, if they can't perform those tasks, and I just simply give that rank because they've been coming and paying their tuition, there's no honesty in the system. You know, the system fails you. So it's important to hold those standards.
And it's funny when you, that's a nice example. I like that because it brings to the duality of honesty, because we want to be honest and we want people to be honest with us. But sometimes, do you really want people to be honest with you? Like you mentioned, that student who's not performing as should be expected to get that rank, you want to be honest to them and their parent. But at the same time, the parent may not want to hear that, or the student. A lot of times it's very hard for us to hear true criticism. One thing about Master Adams and Master Woods, which was always wonderful, they did not lie. They did not puff you up. If you were doing it right, they told you. If you were doing it wrong, they told you. If you had no hope of getting it right, they would try to help you as best they could. And then they would say, okay, we're going to have to go a different route with this. And I really appreciate that, because oftentimes we always say, just be honest with me. Our wives are great for that. Just tell me what you mean. Just tell me. And then you do. And then you end up in a worse situation. So honesty, it's like I said, it's a double-edged sword. We want to convey honesty. We want to be honest. But at the same time, ask yourself, do you really want to be? Do you really want to know what that person thinks of you? And that's where I think it's kind of scary. But often overall, I do believe that if you're honest and if you know, it's easy to move forward with anything you do. If I'm doing something that offends you and you tell me, I just don't think this is right, and this bothers me. Okay, now you and I have set a standard. We have leveled the playing field. I know where you stand, I know where I stand, and we can move forward. But if you're like, hey, is this bothering you? Oh, no, no, go right ahead. And then you're behind yourself saying, oh, he gets on my nerves when he does that. You're you're building unnecessary walls. You know, you're eroding the very concept of honesty. You know, it could be wonderful, but it could be brutal. And I think in order for us to move forward and embrace honesty, we have to embrace all sides of it. Now, curious thing about that with children, children are brutally honest. A child will tell you things that you just like, wow. And people get angry with children. They say, don't lie, be honest. But when the child is honest, you get angry. So you're sending signals here, mixed signals, excuse me. So what does that do? It promotes a little thing that I like to call make believe honesty. You know, oh, I'll be honest to a point. And then we keep going with that and building upon that. And unfortunately, as we get older and we move into our adult lives, instead of embracing that I'm honest with you so you know where I stand, I'm embracing I'm honest so as not to hurt your feelings. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot with our leadership, with our politicians. You know, just be honest. Tell me how you really feel. You know, I may not agree with you, but if I know where you're standing, okay, just be honest. I can't accomplish this. We can't do this, but we can do this. Just be honest with me. Don't promise me the moon and the stars when you know the only thing you can give me is a little 3x3 backyard. Don't do that. Just be honest with me. Be upfront, you know? And one of the things I find that I've had one thing when being a dad with my boys as they've grown up, they are brutally honest with me to a fault, and I'm brutally honest with them. But if they're doing something and it's not right, I tell them. If they're trying something, I say, you know what, that's not good enough yet. I tell them. I don't degrade them with it, but I'm honest with them, and it makes them live to a standard. So when they're doing something, they know in their heart, well, this is the way, this is the best I'm doing, because I'm not propping you up falsely. I will always give encouragement. That's honesty. But I will also give criticism if necessary, and that's honesty. So you have to embrace both sides of honesty, the wonderful, caring side of being virtuous and the brutal side of telling you how it really is. That's something that we've got to push forward. Now, I don't know what it's like down in Kentucky, but here in Detroit, Detroiters are quite honest. They will let you know in a minute when you stepping wrong or doing whatever. And it could go either way. I think it's a good thing, but I do appreciate that.
Well, in Kentucky, I mean, honestly, again, it's funny how we use that word. Like if I don't preface that, I'm gonna lie to you, you know. But uh, of course,
Well, you're an honest man, so I'm assuming you're going to
we're
tell me the truth.
yeah. But it's interesting how unconsciously we just want to throw that into the sentence. Um, we are getting into that. We're on the cusp of that belt of Southern charm here in southeastern Kentucky. So it's not quite as straight up as it is in Michigan or the Detroit area. And it's hilarious because in the workplace, uh, there's a few of us transplants from the North factory environment. And the way we interact with each other, some people think we're angry all the time, but we're really just being straight up. And, you know, it's not personal, but, you know, we can talk to each other in a certain way that might offend others of the local culture. But, you know, we don't, it's interesting because down here, you know, it really is that, you know, we're up north, we might be, you know, we might tell somebody, you're a freaking idiot. You need to stop that. Down here, it's like, oh, bless your heart, honey. You know, it's really how, you know, it's about how it goes. But you hit on a couple subjects there that are really, and especially with children. I mean, it's almost like we train them to lie, you know, and then we start giving those little nuances, like the little white lie, you know. If mommy asks you if she looks pretty today, you know, regardless of what you think, you tell mommy she looks pretty. You know, uh, we almost come up with excuses to not tell the truth, and that's unfortunate. Uh, just going back to our society, we have become almost encompassed around the term politically correct. You know, everything uh, revolves around this political, politically correct social environment. Well, when you have to preface it, the word correct, with the word political, it makes it less than the whole. So sometimes by not telling the entire truth, we're still lying. You know, we're still not being honest. There are different kinds of dishonesty. You know, one is to tell a complete, uh, you know, not even related to what is true, and the other is to tell less than what is true. So, you know, this culture of political correctness, we as a society, we ought to understand that it's not the whole. It is less than the whole, and it is dishonest in nature. It's a culture of white lie. Not sure why we call it a white lie. If that's supposed to be some kind of a cleansing or, you know, cleaning of, or a pure lie, there's no such thing as a pure lie uh, in the sense of purity. I mean, there is absolute deceit, but that the politically correct culture is in essence a license to lie or be untruthful.
There's an interesting phrase, you know me and my movies. And one of my favorite lines is Pirates of the Caribbean, when they're talking about Jack Sparrow at the very end of the first one. The one of the characters, Barbosa, he tells him, he said, you know, Jack, I'm kind of surprised that you're like doing this. And it was something he said always stuck with me. He says, me, I'm dishonest. And you can always count on a dishonest man to be dishonest. Honestly, it's the honest people you have to worry about. And I used to think about that, and it ties in exactly what you just said. If you're dishonest, and I know you're dishonest, every word's coming out of your mouth, I'm like, okay, grain of salt, I don't know. But if you're known to be honest, I'm gonna wonder, okay, you're telling me the truth, but what are you leaving out of that? Like one of the things you often see when someone asks you something and you tell them, And then later on, something else comes out. And they said, well, why didn't you tell me? You didn't ask that. You just asked this. Whereas if you told them this, it might have made the situation better. It might have made for hurt feelings, but you could have moved past that. But we're so conditioned to, like you said, political correctness, PC, or I like to call it compassionate lying or compassionate truth. I'm going to tell a compassionate truth, you know, that we are losing sight of what it means to really, truly be honest. And we're soft-skinned. We're soft-skinned. I saw an interesting meme on TikTok. I like TikTok. It's funny. And the thing at the top said, people in the 80s. And the guy walked by and he stubbed his toe really hard. And he was like, hmm. Then it said, people in the 90s to 2000. The guy stumped his toe. He's like, ooh, that hurt. And then it said, people 2000 to now. He stumped his toe and went, oh my God. Oh. The same action, three different directions based on the societal cues. You know, we used to say back in the day, when you fall down, just get up. Stop crying, just get up. Now we're saying, oh, it's okay to acknowledge it's okay. No, you're hurt. I mean, it's a balance. I want to be compassionate, but at the same time, I don't want to hinder you. One of the best places we learn is in the dojo, because everything comes back to the dojo. When you get hurt, yes, there is concern for you, but there is also, okay, can you get up? You need to get up, because first and foremost, Ishinru is a form of self-defense. And if you're defending yourself in the street, they're not going to care if you hurt. They're going to keep stomping you. So I need to teach you that even though you hurt, you can move forward. I will acknowledge that you're hurt. I will be honest and say, yes, you are hurt. But I will also tell you, you have to learn to overcome this if you can. You've got to dig down and realize what you're capable of. So that, again, that honesty we learned at the dojo, it transpires. When someone, a friend of ours or whatever, loses a job, sometimes we know why they lost their job. We know that they had a bad attitude, or they were always late, or their work was sloppy. But we don't want to, add to injury. So we'll say, oh, well, you'll get better. And this just wasn't the job for you. You'll move forward. And that's a disservice. If you, for instance, you're an engineer, if your work is shoddy and they fire you, and me as your friend knows your work is shoddy, and I tell you, Vince, they didn't appreciate what you were doing, man. They didn't appreciate your roundabout thinking. What's going to happen is you're going to be confident in your incompetence, go to the next job, and the cycle will repeat. Whereas if I'm your friend and I say, well, Vince, I understand you got fired, but dude, when I look over your work, a lot of times you miss points, and you're always late. So maybe you need to improve those things. I want to be honest, even if it risks the friendship, because overall, if you truly are my friend, you will say, you know what? He's only telling me something to help me. So I think if we could stop worrying so much about whose feelings we're going to hurt, and how is this going to be perceived, or more importantly, how am I going to be perceived? One of the best things about being over 50 is how liberating it is. I don't give a damn what anybody thinks about me anymore. I just don't care. I say what I want. I do what I want. I just don't care. Because for some reason, when you turn 50, you realize, you know what? I'm a half a century into life. I can be brutally honest with you. Hey, buddy, you are looking sloppy. Okay. Hey, lady, I'm sorry. Those jeans are too tight. You don't look good. It's freeing. And you can be honest with yourself. Okay. My hair is thinning and it's turning gray. Okay. I limp. So I know I walk like a penguin. So what? I'm still me. We need to learn how to be honest with ourselves at an earlier age. If you had that liberating experience in your 20s, think about your life. If you could take that brutality, that brutal honesty that you have now, and go back in your 20s and think about where you could be, or just in general, how many fake friends you could have shared, how much baggage you could have shared. You know, you don't need to carry all that with you. You need to be honest and say, this is not working. Bye. You are not right. Bye. Honesty can lead to happiness if you are truly honest. And a lot of people, they don't want to be truly honest. You say you do, but you really don't. And you've got to start thinking, you got to look at your life and say, okay, what am I being brutally honest about? Or what am I being compassionately honest about? What compassionate lies am I telling? And you got to start with yourself. Look in the mirror and be brutally honest with yourself. If you can do that, it'll branch outward. If everyone could look in the mirror and say, okay, honestly, I'm lazy, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. You can start saying, I'm lazy, so I'm going to start doing this. I'm a little overweight, so I'm going to start doing this. My cardio could be better, so I'm going to start doing this. Those three things that you were brutally honest with that you are now correcting that will make you more functional, as opposed to, I'm not lazy. I'm just working my own way. I'm not overweight. It's wintertime and I'm supposed to pack on. You know, if you're justifying every little thing with a slight compassionate truth or a compassionate lie, you're really destroying your own self. And we do that in society. We do that with our kids. We do that with our friends. And we've just, it's like you said earlier, we've come to the point where political correctness, you know, or compassionate lying, it's just, it's eroding the foundation of what makes us strong. And how do we come back from that?
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were describing that, that literally the term political correctness, again, it is that all it is an excuse, right? And
Mhm.
excuses are just results of lies that we're telling ourselves. We know where we fall short and we try to make excuses to justify. And that does start with me, right? If I'm not honest with myself and I'm honest with other people, to me, that's the worst thing in the world because there's nothing. Two or three things really, really bother me. One is thievery. I hate for somebody to steal from me, which goes with honesty, right? I hate a thief because regardless of the monetary value of an item, it may have sentimental value that, you know, it may be something that can never be replaced. So it just really, really bothers me when somebody steals uh, from me or anybody. If I know you're a thief, I have a very low account of you. The other thing is hypocrisy. I cannot stand a hypocrite. It's just somebody I don't want in my life. You know, so if you're gonna say something, you need to toe the line. If you're gonna hold somebody else accountable for something, you need to toe that same line. Uh, so in our culture today, I think we're immersed in sort of this hypocritic, you know, ideology. It's crazy. It's crazy. It it just makes it very, very difficult. And being honest with yourself or with other people, the more consistent you are with that, the earlier you start with that, then the less traumatic it's going to be. You know, when you do have to tell somebody something, uh, as a teacher, as a sensei, you know, I try to, you know, you start early on with your students, telling them when they do stuff wrong. If I don't correct their stances, you know, when we're learning our basics, and I don't start doing that until I'm teaching them the second or third kata, makes it much more difficult, you know, for them. And rightly so, they ought to look at you and say, "Why didn't you tell me that, you know, months ago or years ago?" You know, it's just honesty is the same way when you're dealing with yourself or anybody else. Be honest in the little things, and then you won't have to address the big things. If you've got a friend that's chronically late that you're always having to wait for all the time, you know, address it. Say, listen, man, you got to be here. I can't be waiting for you 15 minutes every day. I'm here on time. Set your clock, you know, because people fall into habits of doing what they're allowed to do. And as that line moves, so does their actions move. You know, I and as a teacher, like I said, you got to start and be consistent. And the same thing as a manager. You know, in my work world, I have employees that work for me. We do yearly reviews. Uh, you know, you hope you don't wait till the end of the year to try to collect or correct some, you know, something that's been going on all year long. You know, when you see a bad habit or something forming, then you need to try to straighten it out as soon as possible and just be consistent with everybody.
Sensei always says, and Master Wood says it too, it's a little thing, but it's a big thing. And a bunch of little things equal a bunch of big things. And I always like that, because like you just mentioned, if you consistently let the little things go, down the road, those little things are going to add up to a very big problem. And it could have been addressed by little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit. Something as simple as for Ishinru fist, for those of us who are watching on YouTube, I have my Ishinru fist with the vertical thumb. This thing here, this is a little thing. The pinky is up. I let my pinky relax. That's a little thing. But down the road, if I consistently don't address it, it becomes a big thing. Because as my skills develop and my power develop, now my fist is weak. This is the chink in my armor because I don't have my fist correct. And I'm going to break my hand. Or even worse, I'm not going to break when I'm hitting. So it's a little thing, but it's a big thing. And that's one thing that the dojo stresses. And I'm always grateful. We always mention this. We always pay homage to our masters and senseis who we've had the pleasure of working with over the years. But the dojo, I'm so thankful for that framework that it gave me. When you said it, like I said, I always go back to this. The dojo is the framework which we hang our life on. I mean, it teaches you these little things that you need to correct, because if you can do it in the dojo, you can do it in your everyday life. If there's something that you're consistently just letting go, stop doing that. If there's something that you think could change, but for lack of a way of saying it, or for lack of wanting to hurt some feelings, you let it go, don't do that. It's better to rip the Band-Aid off, deal with it before it becomes a really big problem. And I do appreciate that we were instructed that, not just with our fighting, but how to be, men of honesty, men of integrity and accountability. I do appreciate how we do that. And I try to impart that to my sons. And one of the words you used earlier was hypocrisy. And you and I are men of faith. One of the things, and I hate to say it, some of the biggest hypocrites you will ever find are in the church. There are so many people who they've got praise God on their license plate, and they're walking around with the Bible, and and they can quote you every scripture. But when you look at their daily lives, their daily interactions, their daily activities, they are the most non-Christian people you will ever meet. And as a Christian, honesty is part of that. I have to be honest with my faith. I have to be honest in the fact that I need God in my life, because I can't do it alone. Okay. I have to be honest with the fact that I'm not perfect. So I need some kind of tool. I need guidance on that. You need to be honest with that. You need to be honest with that. You will not be able to do everything the way you think it's going to happen. You're going to have to make sacrifices and changes. So many people proclaiming to be honest, and they're not. They do so much damage. The church is a place. The dojo is a place. We've often talked about the McDojos. They're out there telling these kids, they're teaching these kids this stuff is going to work, and I'm this and that. And then when the person gets into a real situation, all of a sudden they're in a life-threatening situation, and they can't do anything about it. Or they realize, man, I suck. I really suck. Now they come back to the teacher. Now you've got a problem, because you've told them that what you're teaching is excellent. But guess what? You aren't honest with them. Then you have to wonder, were you just being dishonest with them, or are you being dishonest with yourself? You and I have both come across those fellow karatekas who they're legends in their own minds, and they've convinced themselves that they are just amazing. And you step to them one good time, you're like, you're not as good as you think you are you? And then it's like a shock to them. So how do you get to that point? How do you stop yourself from saying, I'm just great? How do you stop yourself from doing that? It's like we said, those little bitty things. You got to first be able to look in the mirror and be brutally honest with who you are and what you are. I know I am not the greatest fighter. I'm not. I never was. I'm a good fighter. I won tournaments, but I'm not the greatest fighter. However, I am an exemplary Sideman, because I know I am, because I work at it and work at it and work at it and work at it. And it's just, fortunately, I'm just gifted with that, and I work on that. I can be honest with that. If I'm telling you something about fighting, when people come and ask me about fighting, I will tell them in a minute. I'll tell you what I do, but if you really want to know the grits, Sensei Ellis, he's got more competition experience than me. You should talk to him. Or Sensei Phillips is just a natural born killer machine. You should talk to him. I'm not going to sit there and pretend I'm something I'm not, because that's doing you a disservice. Like, I could not tell you anything about jujitsu. I wouldn't even attempt to. I couldn't. Why would I? I'm going to refer you to Sensei Ellis, who's got, hands-on experience with that. But you have some who will take the grappling moves out of Seisan and the grappling moves out of Nahach and the few grappling moves we have in Wansu, and they will equate that being, oh, I'm great in jiu-jitsu. I can teach you this stuff to go against the jiu-jitsu guy. Then, okay, great. I've given you a false sense of hope. Now you go up against Sensei Ellis, ground and pound, you on your back on the mat, wondering what happened. I wasn't honest with myself. You got to be honest with yourself. It's just that simple. I know that you and I have fought numerous of times. And like they said in the Matrix, you don't truly know someone until you fight them. I can tell you, anyone listening, Sensei Ellis is one of the most honest people you will ever meet. And if you are not honest with yourself, he will very politely, but very directly let you know that your technique is a lie. But I appreciate that because it makes us better martial artists, which in turn makes us better men, women, children who are practicing this art. And it in turn makes us better citizens. I think we got to step back from the political correctness, as you said, and start looking forward to, hey, this is not right. And this is just not right because, the one thing that gets me is everyone now is afraid, but race is a very touchy subject. I'm a black man, you're a white man. There's nothing wrong with me saying, oh yeah, Vince, my friend Vince is coming over. Oh yeah, you'll see him, he's a white guy with the long hair. It's nothing wrong with that. People will go all the way around. Oh, Vince, yeah, he's about 5'10", he's kind of stocky, a little salt and pepper in the beard, he's often smiling. So, okay, instead of just saying, yeah, he's about 5'10", he's a white guy, he's got a little gray in his beard, that narrows it down right there. But we're really trying to, people will often say, oh, Mrs. So-and-so, yeah, okay, she's overweight. Yeah, she's a heavy girl. You'll see her. Instead, yeah, she's well, she's gonna be dressed really nice. Oftentimes her this and that. So you're looking for instead of just saying, yeah, she's overweight. The person knows they're overweight. You're not doing a disservice saying someone's an overweight. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not doing a disservice saying that you are slower or you are faster or you can't move. I'm not doing you a disservice. I am doing you a disservice if I keep trying to couch that and change that. And as you say, politically correctly explain that. Now I'm doing you a disservice because you have no idea of what you really are. And I can't help you anymore because now I'm so comfortable with lying, because it's still a lie, that, and then you're going to be mad when something happens. If you notice that if you tell someone asks you an opinion and you don't tell them honestly, or you try to spare their feelings, and then someone else is brutally honest with them, they won't get mad at that person. They come back to you. Well, why didn't you tell me I was doing this? What do you say to that? You can't say anything because now you look ineffectual. Whereas if someone asks you a question and you say, no, I do not think that looks good on you, such and such, and these are the reasons I feel it just doesn't. That's my opinion. Okay, now they know. They know where you stand. And that's one of those beautiful things about being over 50. We can say those things. When our wives ask us, does this look good on me? We've been married for so long that we can kind of say, you know what, hon, that does not quite suit you. You're beautiful, but that outfit is a little wrong. And they know that, you know what, he's being honest with me. As opposed to, oh, baby, you look amazing. And then they get outside and your friends are like, girl, what you doing wearing that? Your man let you out the house looking like that? Now they come back to you. Why didn't you tell me I look like? So I said all that to say, we've got to stop being so comfortable with compassionate lying. We've got to be more comfortable with honesty, whether it's brutal or whatever it is. We've got to be more compassionate with being honest and truthful as defined. Honesty is the act of being honest and truthful. We've got to get accustomed to that.
Yeah, and it's not a license to be mean either,
No,
right? I mean,
no.
honesty shouldn't be a license to be mean. You should be able to convey the information in a positive manner. We use our wives as an example. We don't have to say, we don't have to be mean. We could say, honey, that does not accentuate your better features, for example, or
Diplomatic.
yeah, be diplomatic. It's not a white lie. We are being honest, but I was, as you were talking, I was thinking, we talked about hypocrisy and those things. And one example in my own life that I can share, because I think it's really relevant. We are men of faith, And of course, thou shalt not lie is one of the 10 Commandments. So obviously, God thinks it's important. And I think one of the reasons he, put that in there was so we could trust him. God says he won't lie, so his written word must be true. But I've always been a faithful person, but uh, I was never a Christian until later in life, right? I was never a professing Christian, a practicing Christian. I had a knowledge and a fear of God, but I did a lot of stupid things when I was young. I didn't live like it, so I didn't come to Christianity till later in life. And my children, I got 4 children, and my oldest children were grown. They were high school or out of school before I came to Christianity. So I got to give my oldest son credit for this. I was kind of checking him one day on some of his, activities, and the results as I saw it from a Christian perspective. And he said, you know, I've seen you do a lot of the same things I'm doing. He said, I've seen you be drunk, act foolish, all these things. He's like, you held my legs for my first keg stand. And, and now you're telling me that it's wrong. And I said, I understand all that. And he said, you keep doing what you're doing. He said, 18, 19 years of my life, you acted this way. He said, you keep doing what you're doing for 18, 19 years, maybe I'll see some validity in it. So, yeah, so he knows, that was an honest moment between us, but
it got real.
Got real. But, I respect him for not his choices, but, for being real with me in that moment. And, and there again, honestly, all I can do is pray for him, and but it's those things, again, when you are doing something, your life is your greatest witness, not what you say. It's what you do. That's what people are noticing, and that's where you really have to be honest with yourself, is in your actions. Your actions will tell on you quicker than your words. You can say whatever you want to on Twitter, you can say whatever you want to on Facebook, but when a person comes into your home and they see you in your natural environment, that's when they're going to see you at your realest. So, and the people who are closest to you, they're the ones that are going to know you the best for who you truly are. And, again, all of these things that we've been talking about over the last, this is week 6, they just they just keep intertwining, you have that. Obviously, you're not going to have integrity without honesty.
Right.
It just can't be. And accountability comes from honesty. If you said you're going to do something, you need to be honest and do it. If not, you need to be held accountable.
You got to have courage to be honest.
Got to have courage to be honest, because a lot of times lying is the easy way out. That's where kids learn it. Kids learn from a very young age that if I do something wrong and I admit to it, I get punished. They learn that if they deny it, sometimes that punishment is deferred.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a learned behavior in children. Sometimes taught. Sometimes they witness their parents lying, and through observation, they learn to be untruthful, and that's very unfortunate.
It is. I saw a great example of that, of the show on Netflix I was watching called Evil. Interesting show, but the grandmother gave the granddaughter some advice. The granddaughter took the advice, ended up getting in trouble for it. So when the mom said, well, who taught you this, grandma? So when she confronted the grandmother said, what? You didn't hear that from me. So the granddaughter was upset. She says, how can you lie like that? She says, let me tell you something. Everybody lies all the time. Your parents lie. I lie. Here's the thing. Tell the truth that will allow you to get the most benefit. And I'm like, wow. And it's basically what you just said. Our kids are learning that if I say this, this is going to happen. But if I omit this and maybe just say that, yeah, I think I'll go with that route. And it's sad, but it is a true thing in our society. And our kids are very, very good for pointing out things to us. My whole martial arts career changed when my son was my oldest, when he was about 4. I want to say he was 4. um I had been training hard, going to tournaments, winning trophies, and he had been seeing that. And it's like I didn't realize how competitive I'd become. I didn't realize that my focus was shifting in that, because we're from Dexter Davidson and Southfield, we gonna win. And so I was talking with him one day, and he was training. He says, yeah, Dad, I'm going to start training. I said, yes, you are. I said, now why? Because I'm always saying martial arts is about character, and it's about, self-defense and this and that. I'm hoping he's hearing this. So I said, now why do we train? He says, we train so we can get good, so we can go to tournaments and beat up people and win trophies. And I just, it froze me. And I'm like, what did you say? He said, well, that's why you train so hard, because you're always going to the tournaments and you come home with the trophies. So you want to beat up people so you can get the trophies. That's what karate's for. And it sat with me for like an hour. That sat with me. And of course I had to talk. No, no, no. But that day I went through every single trophy that was in this house. I grounded them up. I threw them in the trash. I've never competed in a tournament since then, because that's not what I wanted to do. I got caught up in it. But I realized I don't want that. No, I want this to be a lifestyle. I want this to be for me. I want it to be, like, for lack of a better word, the framework that I can hang my life on. I've always been a fan of martial artists. I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to follow the code of Bushido. But seeing what I was telling him was one thing, and what he was seeing was so different. And at that young of an age, to key on that, it taught me how instantly you've got to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And for me, like I say, I know how I am with my anxiety, and I'm excessive. So it's like I'm extreme. I said, you know what? This is not what I want him to see. I want him to see that no, tournaments are not important. And that was it. Now my other son who competes, and I tell him, I said, if you want to compete to test your skills, you can. If you don't want to compete, I'm fine with that. I said, never make it about winning. Make it about seeing where you stand, so that you'll know what to improve. I had lost sight of that. And this 4-year-old corrected me really quick. He was brutally honest from what he saw. So I think that having kids is an amazing blessing, because we can take advantage of that brutal honesty, and it can learn us old heads a thing or two, and we can grow from that. So like you, one of my great lessons came from the mouth of my child, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and it seems like the younger the better. Sometimes we will find some of those things that we don't realize we're doing sometimes. Our young children, when they pick up on it and you hear it from them, it'll surprise you.
Yeah.
Like I've got some grandchildren now, and when they were young, uh, you know, I've got a 3-year-old grandson now, and he's picking up on his father's language habits, you know, and one of the things that he will say when something doesn't quite go the way he thought it would go is, "Oh shit." You're like, instead of "oops," that's his immediate reaction. And you're like, "Levi, where'd that come from?" He's like, uh, of course he rats out his dad, but that's what dad says. But it but I remember my kids doing the same thing, when they were young. They learn language from us. And sometimes we don't it's just habit for us, unfortunately. It's habit. And sometimes we're not honest about our habits. But when you hear it from somebody else who is basically mirroring you, it's an opportunity to be honest with yourself and say, I probably need to check what I'm doing there. You know, I probably need to pull myself back on that because that's what I'm projecting to the world.
And it goes back to, like we said, you've got to, honesty starts with the person in the mirror. It goes right back to that. You know, honesty starts with you. Do you have what it takes to be an honest person with yourself? Can you face the hard truths of your life? If you can, that's one step in the right direction. If you can't, you might want to think, well, why can't I face these hard truths? You know, you've got to accept the fact that not everything is perfect. You can try to make it perfect, but if you're not honest with your abilities, what's that topic just brings me up. That's a whole thing too. Honesty with our abilities. You know, we like to encourage people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at some point, encouragement can become a handicap if you're not honest. There are some folks who are just not going to be good at other things. Like I said personally, I can train and do whatever I want. I will not be as skilled a fighter as, say, someone like Master Early, you know, Master Phillips, you know, Master Schaefer. I just won't be. It's just the fighting. I mean, I can do the technique, I can defend myself on numerous occasions, but I had to be honest with myself. So I am a person who says, okay, I don't have a natural gift for this, but I do have a natural gift to study. That's my thing. And I will learn the principles to make sure that what I can do will allow me to do what I need to do. There's nothing wrong with someone encouraging, saying, you're going to be great, this is great. But at some point, you have to say, okay, this is not your strongest suit. You know, like you said earlier with your wife, that doesn't accentuate your better features. At some point, encouragement can become handicapped if you don't have honesty. You've got to be honest with your encouragement and be honest with your criticism and be honest with, hey, look, flat out, this is just, you're not good at this. You know, I don't know why you're not good at this. There are some things we all can't do. You know, you and I, you know, like you said, there are many people who can open their mouths and just angelic voices come out. I'm a wonderful singer in the shower. When I step outside of that shower, well, yeah, I won't break any glass, but I might hurt your eardrums a bit. I have to be honest with myself about that. So I think we got to start looking in terms of that. You know, it's okay to be encouraging, but sometimes your encouraging can become a handicap if you don't couch that with a good dose of honesty. And like you said, honesty is not a license to be mean or cruel. It's just a license to be truthful.
Yeah, it's funny. Yesterday, my wife and I were out cleaning up around the house, getting ready for winter. You know, cleaning out the flower beds and whatnot. And I had my earbuds in, my radio, you know, phone playing music, and I guess I was singing along louder than I thought I was. But you know, I caught her looking at me and kind of giggling a little bit, and I was like, "What? You don't like my singing?" She's like, "Well, you do hit a sour note every now and then, you know, because my wife, she can sing. She's very musical, plays piano and whatnot. But you know, she was honest with me. She was honest with me.
And we can count
It's
on wives to be honest.
yeah, it's interesting. You talked about, you know, being honest with your abilities. I watched the Jordan documentary recently, The Last Dance.
Yes.
I'm not a basketball fan. I don't know anything, you know, about basketball per se. Uh, but I am a fan of excellence. And you know, obviously, Michael Jordan is an example of one who excelled in his field. So I was really interested to watch the documentary and, you know, see which way they took it. And I really liked the way the documentary was laid out, and it seemed like the way that the coaches coached the team. You know, a lesser person would, when you have a person of that skill level on your team, would try to, you know, elevate everybody up to the level of that person. You know, they would, you know, he can do it, why can't you do it? That's oftentimes the direction that we go. But it really seemed like uh, they tried to find other skill sets amongst the team, you know, to build a better, well, to build a better team. You know, you had this guy who was a play executor as well as a play maker, but, you know, then you bring in a strong defenseman like Dennis Rodman. You know, you got another guy out there that's able to shoot and score and, you know, build up around all of this. But, you know, to me, it was really, really interesting. And, you know, he was just another one of those guys who was kind of honest with himself, to a certain extent. He always held himself to a high standard. And now he would kind of hack on the guys. And if he felt somebody was slacking, even these are professional athletes, but he would call them on it, in practice, be like, hey, pick it up, and all the time. I thought that was really, really interesting. They even talked about his gambling, and he was honest about that, you know.
Brutally so.
Yeah, he said, I don't have a habit. I just like it, and I can afford it. So it shouldn't be an issue. My bills are paid, you know, there it is.
I mean, it was honesty. I enjoyed the
Right.
documentary as well. And one of the things that you pointed out was, it's so easy to say, oh, this man is just amazing. He's just amazing. One of the things, the reason he was such an amazing player is because he pushed himself harder than anyone was going to push him. Master Adams, one of the things he always says, he says, I can't stand, I know you've heard this. He said, I hate when people just tell me, you're so gifted in karate. He's like, no, I'm not. I've just done this punch 20 million times. And that's just really the case. A lot of times with people who are great in our minds, if you really look at it, yes, there is going to always be that natural ability, but it's also the work ethic, the honesty with themselves that I want to be great. So I've got to push myself. I've got to practice this. Okay, 10, 20 times, that's not enough. I've got to practice it 20, 100 times, And that was the thing, like you said, Jordan, he pushed himself and he would push the team. He's like, look, if I'm in here 3 hours early, you better get in here and start practicing, you know? He's not going to say, you're not going to be as good as me, but you can be you can be your best you. You've got to practice so you can be your best you. And I really appreciated that documentary too. And again, that's another form of, the encouragement, not letting it become a handicapping, but using some honesty to offer encouragement, but at the same time, give you some hard truth so you'll know which direction you're going. It's a good thing.
I'm I'm I could really appreciate what I saw him doing there, because that's, again, just going from that northern background and the way we communicate with each other versus how things happen down here on the cusp of the Mason-Dixon line or whatever. Uh, some some people think I'm sarcastic, but but I try to deliver them sharp truths and with a little bit of humor sometimes. But if I catch a guy slacking or something, I throw that little jab. But again, it's done with honesty and caring. I'm just trying to bring it to your attention. Just bring it to your attention. The worst lie we tell ourselves is I can't. I think that's a very, very negative thing. There are certain things we can't do, and I agree with that. And anytime I hear one of my students say, Sensei, I can't do that, I'm quick to tell them, yes, you can. You just haven't yet. And there are things that you can't do. You can't fly without the aid of an airplane or some mechanical mechanism. You can't defy gravity. You can't levitate. You're right. There are things you can't do. You can do anything that I'm asking you to do in this dojo with the proper amount of effort. So I can't is a lie that we tell ourselves sometimes. Another lie that we tell ourselves, and I repeat this to my students a lot too, is regarding effort. This bugs me on two planes. Okay, it bugs me as an instructor, as an athlete, as a teacher, as a martial artist, and it also bugs me as an engineer, because it's mathematically impossible. When people say, I give it 110%, I give it 120%, that hurts me, because you're lying to yourself. You cannot give 110%. You cannot give 120%. 100% is all anything it will ever have. Okay. And I tell my students all the time that I've even taught this in Sunday school. You tell yourself that lie, that today you're going to give 110%, or I'm going to give 120% today. In 2 or 3 days, you're going to have a bad day, and you're going to give, you're going to go in there and you're going to allow yourself to not perform and think, well, I overperformed the other day, so that's going to balance out.
Exactly.
It never balances out. It's like trying to catch up on sleep. You can't do it. Give your all in everything all the time. Now that bar, that level of your all is going to fluctuate, but be honest with yourself and know, when you leave whatever task you're doing, did you do it with 100% effort? Were you truly motivated to do that? Did you do your best? Or did you hold something back in reserve? That 100% or that 110% lie that we tell ourselves, every time I hear that, I cringe a little bit, because we get jacked up numbers from production all the time, where it says we ran 110% efficiency, or we ran 120% efficiency. You're like, it can't happen. Put 110% of water in the glass and see what happens. Yes, you've got water on the floor. So that's just one of those ways, that's one of those lies we've, as a society, we've come to accept, and we don't check it. When somebody says, I'm going to give you 110%, we say, great. That's, appreciate that, knowing it's impossible.
One thing that you said that I think should be noted, which I like, is 100%, it fluctuates, and you have to learn 100% of what you're able to at that moment, 100% of your energy at any given moment. There are some days where you just don't feel well. But if you give 100% what your energy is allowing you to do, you can still honestly say, I gave 100% today. Maybe that fell short of what you needed. But in my mind, if I know that based on the way I'm feeling and the way my energy level it is, I'm going to give you everything that I have at this level. Then you can be honest and say that, because 100% on one day, you may be jumping over fences, lifting cars. But after you do that, the next day, your body's going to be hurting, your shoulders are probably going to be broke, and your legs are going to be all messed up. So your 100% for that day, I just got up and walked to the bathroom. That was 100% of the energy you have. So I think it's important to make that distinction and for people to be honest with yourself. If you say you're going to give 100%, ask yourself, what am I capable of? What is my energy level today? And then tell yourself, okay, I'm this, and that. But based on this, I'm going to give my maximum effort of what I'm capable of at this moment. You've got to learn where that line goes. That bothers me too. 110%. People say it to me when I say, so what, just give me 100. I'll be good with that. If you're giving me 100, I know you're giving me everything. If you give me 110, that means you're going to burn out and not be able to finish what you started. So no, just give me 100. I'm good with 100.
I've got a young student who is, I really appreciate him. I mean, this kid he shows up with a very good attitude every day. When he's training, he has a hard time focusing sometimes. He'll get out there. He's a very bright student, scholastically, and but he's got some attention issues, and he's 12. So it's hard for him to focus sometimes. But when we spar, he likes to spar. He'll ask to do it. He'll say, can we spar today? Can we spar today? So when we do it, when he starts to feel pressured, he'll flop on the ground. He'll fall to the ground with the expectation that the fight's going to stop. I caught on to that. So now the rule is, when he falls on the ground, he gets hit 3 or 4 times on the ground. I don't care who he's fighting. If he hits the ground, if it's me or if it's, one of my other instructors or one of the other students, of course I'm observing, but he's going to take a couple body shots on the ground, because and I tell him, there's no safety there for you. Falling on the ground is not safe. that's just allowing somebody to, take advantage of you. If this happens out there in the world, and I stop every time you fall on the ground, and you learn that, okay, when I fall, nobody's going to attack me. I'm doing you a disservice. So this is my way of being honest with him and letting him know, number one, that behavior is unacceptable. In essence, it's a tantrum of sort.
Yeah.
But, number two, there's no safety in that. So he's doing it less and less. It is working. He's learned the lesson. And now, if he falls, it's from some exterior force that's being applied to him. So
That's a perfect example of using honesty. I mean, it's nothing more brutal than getting punched. That's brutal honesty. If you fall down because you're knocked down, fine, get back up if you can. If you fall down because that's just it, I'm just falling down, guess what? That's not going to work. And the only way I can show you to that is by when you fall down, I'm going to continue to pummel you. Now you understand the honesty of what it is that you're trying to accomplish here. I think that's a great example.
yeah,
That
and in our world, I mean, the sport jiu-jitsu world that we compete in and that we train in, it's that's legal anyway. Just because you go to the ground, that doesn't mean the fight stops. It's not like point competition where if a guy falls, they step in and break. No, the fight just moves to the ground. Now you've got ground time. We don't strike on the ground typically in competition, but it can. If it's going to happen in the world, it needs to happen in the dojo. So that's my philosophy, and that's one way I try to keep it honest, in our training. If you're not honest in your training, then your technique is not going to be effective. And that's another way where, combat sports brings honesty to the forefront very, very quickly.
and you will, like you say, you will discover your strengths and your weaknesses, and it will help you. That honesty will help you. Like I said, like I mentioned, I don't really like fighting, but I'm good at it. I'm not the best, but I'm good at it because I had to be. Because some people, like the person sitting on the other end of this camera, loves to fight. So when you fight them, you better bring your A game. When I fight Sensei Ellis, I know he's bringing his A game. So I got to practice and practice and practice. I've got to say at this point, this is not something I enjoy doing, but my principles will help me through this. So I've got to make sure I'm giving 100% to these principles that are being taught to me so that I can give 100% to my fighting. If I can just do that, then I'll survive. My 100% may not be as good as somebody else's 100%, but it's good enough to get me through most of the time. And that's what I'm going for. And again, it starts with yourself. You have to be brutally honest with yourself. And speaking of honesty, we are coming on an hour and 10 minutes, I believe. So you want to give us some closing thoughts to take us home, Sensei Ellis?
Yeah. Honesty is it shouldn't be a difficult subject. We ought to be able to look at each other and deal with each other on a day-to-day basis without deceit. As a culture, we need to move. I don't know if we move beyond the political correctness or retreat from it because it's something that came in at a later date, but see it for what it is.
Sensei, not to cut you off, but our connection was totally unstable. So I'm afraid what you just said that might not have been recorded. So could you start that over? Because we lost connection.
Sure.
I'm afraid a lot of that phased out.
Okay. Again, honesty is not something that should be foreign to us in our culture, but unfortunately it is. We ought to be able to deal with each other in an honest and truthful fashion. We should be able to do it in a sensitive manner if we don't wait till it's too late. Again, honesty is not a license to be mean. As far as political correctness in our society, I think we really need to see it for what it is. If we have to call it politically correct, it's less than the whole. Therefore, perhaps not honest. Be honest with yourself first and foremost. Don't be a hypocrite by no means. Uh, be honest with yourself. Be honest in your dealings with those around you. And in this, probably more important today than it, or in this climate in our country, uh, elections bring winners and losers. That's what, just like competition, it is in essence a competition. And regardless of how this pans out in the end, uh, it's going to go one way or the other. I just, would hope that as a country, we look back to what our forefathers would have us do and try to be honest with that vision. You know, it's not permanent by no means. There will be more elections on both sides. If we didn't get our way or you didn't get your way, whatever, then you know what? Start working in the little things, and then we can make big changes. So that's where I'm at on
Definitely.
that.
That's great. I mean, basically, it's easy to be honest in victory. Let's try to be a little more honest with our defeats. And I can honestly say that to all of those who are listening to us, we appreciate your support and the messages that we get. And please continue to support us. And if anyone has any topics, let us know. We will dive into anything. So on that note, I want to say, everyone, have a great weekend. What is this? Oh, this is Sunday. When you work a day, when you work the weekend, you get screwed up on what day it is. Everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend and be safe out there. Sensei Ellis, as always, it's been a pleasure.
Sensei Gulley, I appreciate it. And again, I'm sorry to add this to the last minute, but those of you who do see this or hear this, please leave comments. Give us some feedback. If there's something that you like, let us know. If you have something you want to hear about or have questions about some sort of topic that you might want us to explore in the future, drop those in the comments. We'd really appreciate that. And with that, I'm actually headed off to do a few hours of work today myself in the plant. So look forward to doing this again next week.